Okay, Connie's up now. Yes, to my favorite singer, Teresa. She is absolutely fabulous. Another round of applause, please. Not only is Teresa a really terrific singer, I think all of you, there are a lot of you here who would come just to hear Teresa. She is phenomenal to work with, and we really, really appreciate everything that she does for us. And there are times when I can't be here to welcome all of you, and I can always depend on Teresa to do a better job than I do. But I am Connie Boland. Warbirds in Review was my idea 20 plus years ago, and if you had told me when we had the air stairs next to an airplane and a boom box with Tex Hill standing up next to a P-40 talking about it, and the owner telling us about that airplane, if you had told me that we could, in our wildest dreams, have a production crew like we do now, their professionalism and the bleachers and the Jumbotron and all the things, I would have said, no way. But we, through the generosity of our sponsorship, our main sponsor is Jim Hagedorn's ScottsMiracle-Gro company. They make it possible for us to pay for the bleachers, the Jumbotron, all those things, and we do that totally through donations. This Warbirds in Review is an arm of EA Warbirds of America, and with the support of the board members, they allow me to bring this production to you, and I'm very proud to do that. But in order for our production crew to have the facilities to work, Ron and Diane Fagen generously came to us a few years ago and said, Connie, we want to build you a building where the crew can work, and we have a green room. So to Ron and Diane Fagen, this Quonset hut you see behind us, they are the ones that provided that to us and are still huge supporters to keep us going. So enough of that, except that the line guys, the volunteers that move these airplanes in and out, I thank all of them, because all the people involved with this just make us look good. And speaking of looking good, we have a couple of guys who are going to come out here in just a minute. Jim Tobul owns this airplane right here, and our moderator today is going to be Brigadier General retired Ed McElhenney. They will be out here to bring you a really, really interesting, heartwarming story about this airplane and the service of the airplane, the commitment that Jim has had for that airplane. And to introduce that, I'd like for you to direct your attention to the video that is produced by Scott Guy at Sleeping Dog Productions, Air-to-Air TV. They are phenomenally talented. So please enjoy the video, and then I will ask you to welcome General McElhenney and Jim once the video is finished. And thank you.
Few aircraft as recognizable or as respected as the Vought F4U Corsair. In 1940, the initial prototype, the F4U-1, was completed and prepared for its first flight. This flight took place in May and went quite smoothly. By October, the prototype was set for a maximum speed test and surpassed expectations, becoming the first single-engine fighter to fly faster than 400 miles per hour. With its distinctive bent wings, powerful radial engine, and unmistakable silhouette, the Corsair became one of the most successful naval fighters of World War II. Entering service in 1942, it quickly earned a reputation for speed, firepower, and ruggedness. Against Japanese fighters across the Pacific, the Corsair proved deadly effective, helping secure victory in some of the war's most important campaigns. The Japanese gave the F4U Corsair the ominous nickname Whistling Death for the distinctive sound it made during a high-speed dive. Air rushing through openings in the aircraft's wing root oil coolers and air intakes produced a haunting whistling noise that could be heard moments before the fighter attacked. Whistling death became a testament to the respect and fear it inspired among its enemies. But the Corsair's story did not end when World War II ended. Just 5 years later, war erupted once again on the Korean Peninsula. As jet aircraft began to dominate the skies, the Corsair found itself facing a new challenge. Although outmatched by advanced MiG-15 jet fighters, the rugged Corsair remained indispensable. Flying close air support missions and nighttime attacks against enemy supply lines, Corsair pilots delivered devastating firepower where ground troops needed it most. The aircraft became one of the unsung heroes of the Korean War. One Corsair in particular continues to keep that history alive. Known today as Korean War Hero, this remarkable aircraft carries a legacy that spans generations. But its story is as much about family as it is about aviation. The aircraft's modern journey began with Joe Tobul, a former U.S. Marine mechanic and passionate aviator. After building a successful engineering career, Joe developed a love for historic aircraft and began restoring warbirds. In the 1980s, he and his son Jim discovered a completely disassembled Corsair hidden away in a Florida avocado orchard. What many would have considered a pile of parts, the Tobuls saw as an opportunity. The father and son team spent the next decade bringing the legendary fighter back to life. Their labor of love culminated in 1991 when the restored Corsair took to the skies once again. Named Korean War Hero, the aircraft soon became a familiar sight at air shows across the country. Joe flew the Corsair while Jim accompanied him in an SNJ trainer, sharing their passion for aviation history with thousands of spectators. Then, tragedy struck. In 2002, while en route to an air show in South Carolina, the Corsair suffered an engine failure. Faced with a catastrophic emergency, Joe fought to steer the crippled aircraft away from homes and populated areas. He succeeded, but lost his life in the crash. For many, that would have been the end of the story, but not for Jim Tobul. After years of reflection, Jim made the decision to rebuild the aircraft his father had loved so deeply. Against the odds, Korean War Hero returned to the air once more, becoming a flying tribute not only to Korean War veterans, but also to Joe Tobul's sacrifice and dedication. Today, Jim flies the Corsair at air shows across America, sharing its history with new generations. The aircraft regularly appears alongside modern Navy fighters in the U.S. Navy Legacy Flight Program, demonstrating the remarkable evolution of military aviation from the piston engine era to the jet age. It also performs in formation with fellow Warbird pilot Scott Yoke's P-51 Mustang, showcasing two of history's most iconic fighters in flight together. Yet beneath the roar of the engine and the excitement of the airshow crowd lies a deeper purpose. This Corsair is more than a restored aircraft. It is a living memorial. A tribute to the pilots who flew it in combat, a tribute to the veterans who served in Korea, and a tribute to a father and son whose shared passion ensured that history would continue to fly. As Jim Tobul often reminds audiences, we owe these heroes a tremendous debt, and one of the best ways to honor them is to keep their stories alive. And thanks to Korean War Hero, those stories continue to soar.
Let's go. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Ed McElhenney. If you were here this morning, you'd recognize me. I'm doing it again tomorrow. And this is the star of the show here. This is Jim Tobul. Okay, you just heard about him a little bit on the video, and we're going to just sit down today and have a little bit of a fireside chat, so to speak. I've known Jim, I don't know how many years now, but I really look forward to this program. We're going to talk a little bit about his history, his dad's history of the airplane, do a little bit of a walk around. We'll get to some questions, but yeah, I'm proud to stand here with an active air show performer, and yeah, Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday, you're going to watch him right there. And Jim, I say thank you first of all for doing that.
Thank you very much. By the way, when I fly on Wednesday, they call it the night show, but actually I fly twilight, just before the night show starts, so it's still official light.
Understand. And I would also say the airplane, to me, looks really, really clean. For an active air show airplane, they normally get a little bit dirty. But I think there's somebody in the audience out here who had something to do with cleaning that airplane. Yeah, but Shelley, please stand up. She had something to do with cleaning that airplane. So that is true love. I'll just say that right now. Okay.
Well, I think I should expand upon this.
Oh, okay.
I was supposed to be here earlier yesterday, and this stuff called the smoke was a challenge, and I got stuck in Dubuque, Iowa, and the 5 of us are ready to go, and it was IFR there, it was IFR here. Shelley was already here, and it took until the afternoon. So then we had an event last night. I finally got on board. Board meeting this morning started at 7:30 in the morning. By the time I got here, I never had a chance to clean, and my wife said, I'll do it. I owe her another piece of jewelry.
There you go.
Because the plane looks great.
What a guy. What a guy. All right, let's start with a little bit of history, first of all. Why a Corsair? Where did that start? Obviously with your dad.
It did. We started out with the SNJ in the late 70s, and Dad started that. We bought it. Excuse me, he bought it. I didn't have two nickels to rub together. And my first Oshkosh was 1982, and we actually flew the SNJ to Oshkosh here, and I was actually flying in the air show. And so that started the propel on the Warbird side, and then Dad wanted a fighter. So we actually bought some Bearcats. And we had Bearcats, but it was hard to find the parts. So Dad decided to sell the Bearcats and buy a Corsair project. And so in 1981, he purchased a Corsair project, and we moved it, started the restoration, and then finished it in December 8th, 1991 was its first flight in civilian hands.
Wow.
And then from 92 on, it's been on the air show circuit.
And how many people rebuilt it? I mean, it's not like you took it to a bunch of guys and said, rebuild it. I mean, it was you guys who rebuilt it, correct?
That's interesting. Yes, we did not have a restoration shop. Dad wanted to do it himself. And being an engineer, we enjoy the technical aspects of rebuilding, such as you can't go to the Napa store to buy parts. So some of the parts are available, some of them are not. We had the drawings. We would manufacture the parts if we couldn't find them. But then the word got out, and then we found Korean pilots that flew it, or crew chiefs or mechanics. And so all of a sudden they all came to help the restoration during that 10-year time frame. So yes, we had people that actually worked on them in the Navy. So, we need the repair needs to be this way, and carried us right through that 10-year period. So it wasn't just Dad and I, it was a host of people that finally finished it.
And your dad was a Marine, but not a flying Marine. He did not fly.
Well, no, he did fly.
He did
more from the navigator side. It was a lot of the jet. He was from propellers transitioning to jets.
Okay.
So it was kind of that transitional period in the 50s.
how did he get into the flying of these Warbirds? Did he start, Piper Cub and then work his way up to Stearman, and how did that work?
Well, Dad, no, he was a private pilot.
Okay.
And so then he started to fly. We worked for engineering firms. Dad was an engineer. He designed and built steel mills in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And so he would travel for the companies, but also had a personal aircraft. Started out with a Stetson 108 and worked up to Mooney's, and then Dad decided to quit and start his own company, and that was in 1969. And then he was off on his own. And then things progressed. And that's where the Warbirds was always there, but it was, also a financial.
How about you?
In terms of?
Flying.
Oh, flying.
I mean, here you are flying how many air shows? And all right.
That was a heck of an intro.
I bet it's an F-35, but I don't know.
It sounded pretty crisp.
Yeah. All right. So
there he is right there.
Yep, there he is. All right. So how did you get going?
Well, my dad had me flying the Stetson 108.
Okay.
And yes, there were phone books this big back then. So I was 9, 10 years old, and so I just started flying, and Dad had me flying and everything. So I enjoyed it, got my license in the 70s, and then progressed from there. And so that started, and then as I got out of school and then into the business, we did corporate flying, so I got into that aspect. Primarily working, but using the aircraft as a tool for the business. We manufactured hydraulics.
Okay. And how did you get into the air show business per se? Was it just one of those transitions where you said, "Hey, this is fun. I like to do this," and next thing you know, you're on the circuit?
Well, yeah, it started out as just flying to air shows for hamburgers, fuel, and just very basic minimal stuff. And then it went into the fighters. And once we got into the Corsair and this type of aircraft, my dad did more of a static and a flybys type mode. I decided to carry it to the aerobatic side. So that's where I do today. I fly an aerobatic routine in this aircraft to show off its capability, aerobatically speaking.
And in addition, you do some formation stuff, I understand. Used to do, I don't know what the Navy called it, the legacy flights with the Navy guys, where you got a Corsair and an F-18 and all that stuff. And you're still trying to do that. I guess there's a little bit of a hiccup right now, though.
I'm actually in charge of the programs, Navy Legacy Flight, and we support the F-18s, F-35s, and the Growlers within the Navy arsenal that decides to go to air shows to put on an aerobatic performance or in a performance period. And so we support them by bringing a fighter or a World War II type aircraft, Navy aircraft, and then we fly. But we also have to go through training, so we have to qualify. We typically go to NAS Lemoore, Naval Air Station Lemoore in California, and we have to fly profiles, we have to practice, train, and then we're certified by the Navy, by the Admiral. They'll sign off, and FAA is there. They sign off, and so we have authorization to fly together in air shows in the performances that we offer.
Okay.
Right now we're on a pause. We've had
there was a little
some
hiccup
things
there.
happen, a little hiccup and burps.
Yeah, I do understand that they're looking for a number 3 Blue Angel right now.
I heard that. That's a rumor.
If y'all haven't seen it, there was a low pass by a Blue Angel down in Pensacola about a week ago or whatever, and he was a little too low from what I understand. So any of you guys looking for a Blue Angel job, I think there's one open right now. So.
Put your application in.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about the airplane. Okay, you guys restored the airplane, and then off you went. In terms of the restoration, hard, easy, parts available, unavailable, did you have to manufacture? Some of these airplanes are a data plate, and then they just gather stuff from all over. Is that the case with this airplane?
Yes and no. I mean, back in 1980s, this is 81, throughout the 80s and into the early 90s, there was still a lot of parts, projects, parts, and what you couldn't find, my dad went up to the archives in the Smithsonian, and we got all the film, the 35 millimeter film for all the drawings in this airplane. So if we didn't have a part, whether it's a fabricated part, a skin, any kind of rib, structural support, anything on this aircraft, we could make it with the appropriate drawings, and we could make it to the manufactured original spec. So that was a tool.
Yeah.
It's expensive, so we tried to find parts rather than making parts, but we had that ability to go both ways.
And this tail number was a tail number that was flown in Korea. Is that right?
Yeah, when Dad bought the project, I didn't have two nickels to rub together back then. But when he bought it, he went to the archives, Naval Archives, and researched the bureau number, which is the serial number of the aircraft, and found it was on some carriers. So then he dug deeper, found out it was on the USS Valley Forge, the USS Boxer, and I just found out within the last 3 years it was on the USS Oriskany, which I didn't realize. So at any rate, Dad researched both of them and found the Valley Forge was in an Akron-Canton squadron, and researched that and found several pilots that flew this bureau number in combat. And also found a crew chief, Lenny DeFranco. He was out of that same area. We were in Pittsburgh at the time, so the Akron was like a Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and so there was Pittsburgh pilots, Cleveland pilots, Akron pilots in this squadron, reserve squadron. And then the other one was Olathe, Kansas, and that was on the USS Boxer. And we found pilots who flew it in that squadron as well, and researched it. So we have copies of their logbooks showing our bureau number and the different strikes they made. This train, this power plant, whatever it may be. And so they actually helped out in some of the restoration of the original restoration. The guys from Pittsburgh, and it was really exciting. So it did have a rich combat history.
How about the name? Is that where the name came from?
Dad looked at it. This is, we're going to digress here a lot. You have two different squadrons, two different folks that flew the aircraft, and so which one do you recognize? Dad had a hard time. So he said, we need to recognize both. And I said, whoa, that means you're going to put Boxer on one side, Valley Forge. You don't do that. Dad says, yeah, well, who are you going to choose? Because we have two different pilots from two different squadrons. So we put one on each side, which was unusual, but that's a history of the aircraft. I mean, that has two different sides. And so that's where it bears the same thing to this day. Both squadrons, it flew in both of those, and we want to recognize from both sides.
Yeah, well, it was a very active close air support weapon system in Korea. We know that. If y'all haven't seen the movie Devotion, that's a very good representation. That's the Jesse Brown story, and Hudner, I see there's more to say there, I think. Yeah,
actually, I knew Mr. Hudner, and Tom would come out and see me fly, and he presented scholarships to young folks that would earn these accolades to acquire this scholarship. And so he looked at me, and Tom says, Jim, I want you to come up and hand this scholarship out with me. I said, sir, this is you. This is, Tom Hudner. No, Jim. Nope. No, it's your airplane, and you're the pilot. Go with me. So I would go with him and present these scholarships. Thank goodness I put a sport coat in my luggage, because it would be up here at Oshkosh.
If y'all don't know the story, that Tom Hudner was the Congressional Medal of Honor recipient for landing his Corsair alongside Jesse Brown's Corsair, who had crashed, unfortunately. Well, who had ran out of oil, and anyway, they couldn't get Jesse out. They ended up getting Tom out, and he was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. So again, a great movie out there. It came out, I don't know, a couple of years ago, something like that. But I didn't know that side, and that is pretty cool. I never met the man, but all I can say is...
It was incredible.
Yeah.
Just a gem of a person.
Quite the story when, you see your buddy down there trapped in the cockpit, and he says, no, I'm going to ditch my airplane alongside him and then try to get him out. So if you have the opportunity, it's a great movie.
Another side note, I was the last Corsair cut from the movie.
How did that happen?
Well, I don't know. Steve Hinton had to call me and tell me, Jim, I got some bad news for you.
Okay.
But at any rate.
All right, let's talk. I want to get to the airplane eventually, but I want to talk about your air show routine and flying that. You've done it probably hundreds, thousands of times at this point.
Probably.
A difficult routine? Is it an easy routine? How many G's do you pull? Is it something you can do with your eyes closed at this point? I would imagine it is just about. I mean, you've done it, and I've watched you many times, and it's a precision show. The sound. If y'all didn't know, what's it called? The whistling death.
Whistling death.
And I'll digress for a second and say, okay, what makes it whistle?
Several things. Primarily, it's the gun ports.
Okay.
Again, this is going to digress in a lot of different areas, but these wings are my spare wings. They're not the wings that really go on the airplane. The ones that are on the airplane, I'm repairing right now. So this is my spare set, and the gun ports are blocked, with covers.
So we're not going to hear the
no
whistle.
No, that's where it comes from. And also the gull wing, right where the oil coolers are, that is the secondary portion of the whistle. So without those, this is very difficult. I have to go pretty fast to make a whistle for just the ports there.
Okay, and in terms of the maneuvers, et cetera, you end up pulling 3 or 4 Gs at the most, probably.
Well, what I do is it's a 1945. I mean, there's a lot of older metal here.
Yep.
But I also want to demonstrate the capability, aerobatic capability of the aircraft. So what I do is some basic maneuvers, if you call it. I'll do loops, I'll do Cubans, I'll do the roll series, so it shows high speed, low speed, agility of doing different maneuvers, maybe some half rolls, 4-point rolls all the way around, and trying to show off that it is very, very agile aircraft. It's a great wing, great horsepower. It's really, really nice. When I pull Gs, I try to keep them below 5 Gs. Mm-hmm. Typically, I'm pulling between 4 and 5. Mm-hmm. And that's about all you want to pull in an aircraft like this. And it does show the aircraft off, which is the whole purpose of me flying the aerobatic routine.
Yeah. All right. And in terms of design, roll rate, you say, is really pretty good.
Very crisp.
Okay.
This is one of the aircraft. He's like my friend. When I fly the Class 45, he flies a Mustang. The faster he goes, the higher the stick forces. So he has to use 2 hands the faster we go. It's like flying a dump truck. He doesn't like me saying that, but so the faster you go, the harder it is. Well, on this aircraft, we have what they call balance tabs, and as the control surface moves, it stays in the airflow. And so what it is basically power steering. So the faster I go, I can take 2 fingers and fly the aircraft because it's like power steering. So that was one of the advanced features of this aircraft versus other fighters in the same time frame. So it's really nice.
How about stability-wise? Is it, for a basic loop or something, is it a pretty good pull, or is it pretty sensitive at speed?
Yeah, no, it's really easy. You just roll right into it. I use the G meter as a guide, so I pull into because I want to maintain a certain G level, and it just goes into all the aerobatic positions I'm going to be. It's very, very nice. It's very responsive. Now, the rudders are being used because, as you can imagine, you got 2,600 horsepower, and as you slow down in speed, things change a lot. So my feet go with that. So I may be neutral when I go into it, and then all of a sudden it's more right foot coming over slower speed, and as I come back down, that right foot comes back out to equal. So it's a lot of moving and pushing, and
it's a rudder airplane
to make it perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, and you were talking about, we might as well get into some of the airplane stuff now. Engine-wise, what's it got in it? It's got a Pratt?
It's this airplane was outfitted with the largest engine-propeller combination at the time, which is the Pratt & Whitney R2800. Very, very reliable, strong motor. Typically, they're right around 2,100 horsepower. This particular one is a little higher, like 2,600, but I also raced it at Reno. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Did you
think
win?
That was another tidbit.
You didn't win.
2014.
Did you win?
No, well, I
Oh.
won 4th place.
Oh, okay.
So,
That's still okay.
But anyway, that's why I had, this is my race wings. They're clean, okay, fast, and aerobatics, it's really clean and nice. When I put my other wings have stanchions for rocket rails. So this configuration, this aircraft was 5-inch HVAR rockets. You had the pylons for drop tanks and more, like 500-pounder, 1,000-pounder. So they're dirty in terms of aerodynamics, and these are nice and clean, so I like that.
Yep. And how about speed-wise? You said you were racing at Reno. What kind of speeds were you getting out on that airplane, on the one that you were racing?
This one right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, with these wings.
Okay.
It's all north of 300 miles an hour.
Okay.
So 300 plus is where I was tracking it.
And how are you getting the extra horsepower out of this motor?
Well,
Or is that a secret? Oh, okay.
A little bit
you're
of
not racing
polishing
anymore.
and making sure everything's running smooth and fast, and it's minor things, but it increases the horsepower.
Okay.
I didn't get into water injection and all the ADIs and all that because that gets into spray bars. You got to cool the engine down. So, no, I wasn't going to go that far.
Yeah.
Kept it. What I flew there in that engine, I wanted to fly home with. Same motor.
Interesting. Okay, how about visibility? You're sitting in that thing. I'm an old F-16 guy, and I was tilted back like this, going, wow, this is really pretty good. I look at this and kind of go, yeah, it's okay, but visibility is still pretty good out of this thing. I mean, if you were to have to go fight against somebody else, right?
Yeah, no, it's pretty good typically when you're into a flying platform. It's really nice. It's a big greenhouse. You can see everywhere. The problem is when you slow down. If you look, you'll see you're sitting far back. They position the cockpit and the pilot farther back than normal, which creates what they call the hose nose. That was one of the nicknames of the aircraft because it goes the engine, it's basically the accessory section is that next section behind the engine. Then you had the fuel tank. The fuel tank is right in front of the cockpit. That's 234 gallons. So by the time you put the fuel tank, the accessory section where your oil tank and all your accessories, your pumps and everything, filters are, then your engine, that's a long ways away. And so that was some of the challenges flying the airplane because the nose was so high. And when you had to come aboard a ship, they called it AOA, and that's angle of attack. And as you slow down, the nose comes up. Well, it blocks the entire carrier because you have to be down. You have to be 4 knots above stall. That's your speed, to be on speed, hitting the carrier. So they had to come up with techniques, which was turn, 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 turn. And once you level out, you lose the carrier. You have to point it down and slam it. That was the technique for landing the Corsair on the carrier. But they had to learn how to do this. And that goes into another tangent why they were banned from the carriers in the beginning, because the oleo struts, the shocks would hit and they would bounce them up. And it was not absorbing the impact and bouncing them up, and they go over the cable. So they couldn't be caught on the ship. So the Navy banned them from the carriers, gave them to the Marines, and the Marines had them in the islands in the South Pacific, and they just produced absolute stunning results. And then they re-engineered the gear to make it more like a dash pot. So when the Corsair came in and slammed the deck, it absorbed. Then they caught the cable. Then they were allowed to come back on the...
All right, let's continue where, okay, you slam it, or you try to slam it on the deck, and you go by that number 4 cable and bolter, if you will. You go around. I understand that was problematic. I mean, if you push the power up, there's a lot of torque there, and you tell me. I mean,
this is an excellent point. In this aircraft, because it's so big, there's so much horsepower and torque in this aircraft, you take off with basically half throttle. And you cannot take off with full throttle because
you don't have enough rudder authority.
There's not enough airflow over the wings to counteract the torque. And so you have to take off with half throttle. And then once you suck the gear up, transition through 150 knots, boom, now you can go all the way up with full throttle, but not until that point. 150 knots is what you need. So you're in a carrier, you're 4 knots above stall, you come in and you bolter, you bounce it, whatever reason, you miss the cable. In training, everything you train with, when you do a go-round, you cob it all the way. That's what you've been trained. This airplane, completely counterintuitive. You cannot do that. And that's where it happened. Guys are all excited. You're landing on a boat. It's a pitching deck. You got all this stuff going on, and then you bolter, and then you forget, and you go back to muscle memory, which is just cob it. And there's some videos out there on YouTube, and you watch him. He misses. He goes up, and he cobs it, and it just torque rolls on him, and it goes right in the water. So that's one thing you have to remember. It doesn't take a lot of inches to do a go-round in this airplane, and you have to consciously go, that's it. And then wait till you suck everything up, and then you can give it more. That's one of the critical aspects of the Corsair.
Okay. How about, we're talking Korea and weapons and stuff like that. It was primarily, under the wings they were carrying rockets most of the time, weren't they? It was a rocket launcher. I mean, it could still drop bombs, correct? And it still had a gun. And how many? I don't even know. How many guns were typically on board?
Well, this is a standard configuration of the Corsair in Korea, not World War II, but in Korea. So you have 6 50 caliber machine guns in the wings, 3 in each wing, roughly 2,400 rounds of 50 caliber. Then you come underneath and you have the pylons, and the pylons were typically 1 drop tank, 150 gallons, and then the other store was a 500-pound bomb or a 1,000-pound Tiny Tim would go on the opposite side. And then you come across, and there was 4 stanchions in each wings for rocket rails. In fact, my dad always had that. He had all this. I mean, it looked heavy. Double drops. He put in they're called 5-inch HVARs. That's high-velocity rockets. And they're 5-inch diameter, and there's 4 on this wing and 4 on that wing. And when you look at this airplane, it looks heavy, and Dad loved that look. But you couldn't fly aerobatics. So if you're going to make it look good, that's great, but you're not going to fly aerobatics. And so, it really, that was a standard configuration. It was a drop tank on the right, and the left was whatever the munition was.
Okay, and you talked about, extra fuel. What, without drop tanks, what kind of range could you get out of this thing?
Well, typically, I use 500 nautical miles.
Okay.
With just the main tank. With a drop tank, you add another 150 gallons. You could make 234 is the main tank. You could add another 300 gallons, so you have 534 gallons total. I did fly at one time like that. I took off from Colorado Springs and went to South Carolina, just outside of Charleston. 5.5 hours, and I still landed with over 100 gallons of fuel.
Wow.
Never did that again.
Oh.
No, I was the limit, not the airplane.
But what was fuel burn? What's a typical fuel burn for cruise like that? What were you burning?
Well, if you're just lobbing the dart, I use 100 gallons an hour for flight plan purposes, but typically you can get it back to about 85.
Huh. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, long-range cruise.
And we were talking briefly about the carrier stuff. Have you ever played around like with a fake deck carrier? Have you ever tried to land this thing?
Yeah.
You have?
I do spot landings. I mean, not on a carrier, but pretending like you were doing it coming in. And, because of the way this gear is designed now, it's like a dash pot, you can never make a bad landing.
Wow.
I mean, you could drop it at 20 feet, and it comes screaming down the ground and goes like this.
Wow.
You can't if you make a bad landing.
I always thought you were really good.
Yeah,
I did. I thought you were really good.
Actually, don't share that with anybody, okay?
Okay. All right.
Still has a carrier hook.
Say again?
Still has a carrier hook in the back.
Yeah,
if you look in the back, the carrier hook still, and it's still operational.
Okay. All right. Talk a little bit more about the airplane at this point. The gull wing. Some people may not know. Why does it have that funny shaped wing?
Well, on the original design, they took the largest engine propeller combination, and then Chance-Vought had to build the airplane around that configuration. So what they did, they put straight wings on it, and they looked, and the gear was so long, there's no way it would survive carrier operation. So they thought, what can we do? There's only very few things you could do. And one of the engineers said, well, instead of the straight wing, let's gull the wing down to lessen the length of the gear. And so that's what they did. And that comes in. That was another engineering challenges. By the way, they're using, slide rules and hand drawing everything back in the 30s. But that's what they came up with, and it was just a phenomenal design. But it was to lessen the length of the gear to survive the carrier landings. That's why the gull wing. Now, people want to know, well, does that add performance, take away? It's a wash. It doesn't. It's not a negative. It's not a positive. It's just an interesting look, that gull wing.
Okay. Talk a little bit of paint job on this thing. You got a nice glossy paint job. Was that the way it was, or is this an air show paint job?
Wow, you're hitting a good one here. Okay, in Korea, there was a color of blue, and it was a blue grayish. It had a little gray hue to it, so it wasn't really a blue. And so my dad and I, we were talking about this, and he goes, we like deep sea blue. The SNJ was painted with deep sea blue, just a beautiful dark blue, shiny paint. Dad goes, I can't paint it the right color, which is the blue-gray. We're going to paint it deep sea blue. So this is deep sea blue. Yes, it's not authentic, but boy, does it look good.
It does.
And that came from my dad. And he made the call, and it was kind of like, yes, sir. And I still maintain the same color. Oh, by the way, that yellow right there, that was coming out of the squadron. Each squadron had different ways to identify their aircraft. And so they had the yellow dome and the yellow on the rudder. See the rudder back there?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And so Dad went, He looked at the color because it's black and white pictures, and at any rate, he figured out it was a 1973 Corvette yellow. So that is a 1973 Corvette yellow, and that mirrored what the guys used back in Korea.
Oh, wow.
And the drop tanks have yellow on the noses. Yep. Same thing.
Wow.
73 Corvette yellow. So
wow.
That's a little tidbit.
Yep. All right. What do you think we do a little bit of a walk around at this point? You want to just go
sure.
and we can point and anything of great consequence that you think we should know about. I will ask about the gear, and you've got the quote the modified gear, the gear that they changed so that it just kind of.
Oh, no, all Corsair. In other words, this came out of the original design. The first iteration of Corsair had that gear that needed to be modified.
Okay.
Everyone after that came out with it. So this is all late model gear.
How about the diameter of the prop?
Diameter prop is just under 14 feet. It's 13 foot 10, I believe it is. And this iteration has a 4-blade prop, where the beginning Corsair had 3-blade prop. So that was the F4U, we'll say the -1 series, which is the same thing as the FG1D,
right?
Because Goodyear was building the aircraft parallel with Chance-Vought, and that's where they had the 3-blade of prop. The -4, which is this aircraft, was the first iteration where they come out with modifications. They added the extra blade. They put a blade. There's a floor inside the cockpit. They learned about to make in terms of modifications from this one. And so it's probably the best variant of all of them, because they got into electro-hydraulics after that.
I look at the distance from the prop to the ground, and most of your landings are wheel landings, I assume, okay? Is there, how close does that prop come? Do you have to really be careful if you're pushing too hard?
I don't want to know.
Okay.
No, it's close. I mean, it will take some additional space, but it takes a lot to get it to touch. But still, you want to be a little low on the tail gear coming in. But I do wheel landing, especially in high winds. Like this kind of wind, it would be a crosswind. Definitely wheel land. I'll touch one main, roll it over in the other.
Yep. All right, some of the radiators and stuff down here. What are all the cooling ducts for here?
Okay, that involves the oil coolers are on the outboard side. You see that round honeycomb?
Yeah, right here. Yep.
Yes, those are oil coolers. You have one right, one left. So if you happen to be hit with small arms fire and puts a hole in one of the oil coolers, you can isolate it from the cockpit and run off one cooler.
Wow.
So that you have dual coolers on there. Inside of those oil coolers are intercoolers, and the intercoolers was for the supercharger.
Yep.
Because they had so much horsepower, it would supercharge the engines. You had to keep that cool, and that was an intercooler. Now we've taken all that mechanism out. We don't operate with intercoolers, just normal ops, because we're not using mill power and all that.
Okay. How about tail flaps? Does this thing tend to overheat on the ground? If you're idling along for a while, is it one of those like the P-40 this morning? You know, they talked about, hey, we can't keep on the ground very long.
Yeah, no, this aircraft is very cool. I've never overheated by just sitting idling, and I've idled for 40, 45 minutes on the ground waiting to take off. Now you got to clear the plugs. Mm-hmm. You know, the plugs will start to load up. But as in terms of the oil, I've never had to ever shut it down, never ever got that close, but it does heat up. Not like a Mustang or a liquid-cooled motor. This is an air-cooled.
Let's see. What else? Walk around this thing. Wheels and tires. Hey. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. This is
It's on my Bonanza, by the way.
then
yes,
you
I
know
do.
what it's there for.
Uh-huh.
Okay, during the testing of the Corsair, came out of it. By the way, that was Boone Guyton. He did all the testing on this aircraft. And Boone was this little guy, and he wrung this airplane out, did all the testing. And what they found is that in a dirty configuration, what I mean by that is gear down, flaps down, everything's dirtied up, and you're going to come in and you're going to land. Well, he goes through the stall series, and when you stall that aircraft like that, it rolled on its back. There was just too much torque between the propeller, the engine, not enough airflow, and then boom. So what it was is that the wing was braking too hard on one side. So what they did is they wanted to kill lift on this wing more equal to that wing. So that one was braking and it was rolling over, and so this counteracted. So when it broke, it wasn't as aggressive, and now you could recover from a full configured dirty stall. And so if you ever see a Corsair without this, that's not good. But you'd only know it when in a stall configuration.
Yeah, I look and it must be a mistake. There's only one on this side. There's nothing over there. But
no, that's one of the things they learned initially. So when you're rebuilding a Corsair, you cannot forget this right here.
Oh, okay. How about lighting? Do you land this thing at night? Where's your landing lights?
Well, I guess you could. You got a flashlight. You know?
I had to ask. I mean,
no, they land them on the carriers. There's no landing lights. Okay?
Whatsoever. Yeah.
But you have an LSO, that landing officer light on the other side, which is given the color, tells you the LSO, the AOA of the aircraft, where the angle of attack is. And if he sees that red, he's going to say, nope, you're too slow, speed it up. So you come in on speed on the what they call the ball.
Yep.
So that's on this side. Gun camera is on this side.
Yep.
And that's another side story. Flying Oshkosh here at twilight, and I hit a bird.
Oh.
Yeah, he went right into the gun port.
Oh.
Yeah. Exploded inside. We had to clean all the stuff out. Went over a week's hangar, and that patch still remains right here. But this is my spare set of wings, so
Yeah.
But that's where the gun camera goes.
Yep. Two birds.
Oh, yeah,
two
birds.
Oh, it's two birds.
Okay, off. I don't know how much time we have. So I get back home, and I did the repair and still flew the air show. That was a couple of years ago here at Oshkosh. So I get back to South Carolina, park the plane, my crew chief. I come in the hangar one day, and I look, and I don't know, some of you can see this, but those are like 200 missions. The airplane did a lot of missions in Korea in the Navy, and he put two birds up there. And I looked at him, I said, really? I said, go up and take them off. Ha, ha, ha. That was really funny. He looked at me and said, Jim, 2 confirmed kills.
There you go.
You know what? All right, I'll leave them. So everybody seems to go, what's with the birds up there? So that's Oshkosh a couple of years ago, and I hit 2, not 1. There was a dent right beside it that his buddy.
3 more, you're an ace, right?
Yeah, there you go. I'm on a roll here.
How about flaps? What's full flaps on this thing?
Full flaps, 50 degrees. Yep. Because you want to pitch that nose over so you get as much forward vision as possible.
Yep. Okay. What else as we walk around, not a whole lot. Let's see. Antennas, flaps, aileron. Yeah, pretty much you don't have a gun sight in this one, do you?
I don't have it installed.
Okay.
But I have it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and yep, there I see the tail.
One thing about the control surfaces. If you notice that the control surfaces, like in the rudder and the elevator, they're all fabric.
Yep.
And everybody goes, fabric, isn't it aluminum? No, it's fabric. And that was because, well, this aircraft has a top speed of 410 knots. And everybody goes, fabric at 410 knots? Yes, it's special. You got to, put extra stitching and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of stuff that goes on there. But it is fabric, which is unusual. And then the hen's tooth of the aircraft is the ailerons. They're made of wood. They're made of wood, and they're wrapped with a real thin sheet of birch. And then you have material with dope and fabric that wrap it. And if it was made of metal, they would flutter and rip off. The only thing that will stick on this airplane is made of wood, and there's about 22 pounds of lead to balance it in there. So that is the hen's tooth of the aircraft, and you can get to 410 knots with that configuration. Kind of unusual for aircraft.
You were talking about a balanced aileron tab,
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
There it is right there.
And yeah,
see how that stays in the airflow?
I was going to say that's
staying in the
right
airflow.
There. Yep.
And that's like power steering.
Yeah.
And then back here. Again, here's the other balance tab that stays in the airflow, and that's the power steering. And here's your trim. And if you notice, there's no trim on that side, but the trim is over there for ailerons. 3-axis trim, all axis. So you have the rudder, the elevator, and the aileron trim.
Okay.
So a 3-axis trim.
What's the JT stand for?
The what?
The JT on the tail.
Joe Tobul.
Okay. Just checking.
Maybe Jim. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Just checking. All right. Well, I think we're down to the point where we can open up to some questions, unless you have other points of note that you'd like to bring up about this beautiful airplane. Right.
Wow.
What's really neat is the fact that this is an active air show airplane. You fly it on a regular basis all over the country. And I will ask, have you taken it out of the country? Do you take it, to air shows in Canada or anything like that?
I've been invited to go to Honduras. We never talked about that history.
That's correct.
After the Navy. So after the Navy was finished, it went to mothballs, and then it was sold to Honduras, and it fought in this El Salvadorian and Honduran war called the Soccer War, 1966 or somewhere around that time frame. So it fought in that war and became a parts plane, ended up back in the U.S. in 1977, and then we acquired it in 1981. Okay. So it fought in another war, somehow survived that one too. So in fact, it had some paint from the Honduran Air Force still on it when we were stripping the layers of paint off it.
And I know you told me several times you didn't have a nickel when you were growing up.
No. At that time frame, I didn't have 2 nickels. My dad had the money.
Yeah,
so
but my question is now, the cost, any idea how much?
It's the wind. Yeah, you can block the wind.
Yeah, anyway, no, I was just wondering what the cost was back then, and if somebody out here wanted to buy a Corsair today, what are we looking at?
Wow, that's a good question. Obviously, it's not for sale.
Yeah.
And I really don't track them, but...
How many are out there? Are there a lot of Corsairs out there? I mean,
that's a good point.
Yeah.
It used to be in the 20s. We just tripped over to the 30s because of new restorations coming out. So now the population's in the 30s.
Okay.
So it's very, very low as opposed to the Mustang.
Okay.
And some of the other ones.
So most likely more expensive than a Mustang just because of availability.
The rarity of them.
Yeah.
I would say maybe $3.5
million.
Okay.
Okay.
But
and cheap to operate.
I thought
too,
you were
I'm
going to ask me operational costs. I was going to say, well, if I added them all up, if I took all my operational costs and added them up in 1 year, I probably wouldn't fly the plane.
Yep, I understand.
I don't want to know.
Yep.
I just don't want to
Yep.
know.
Yep.
And my wife doesn't ask me, and I don't tell her.
But now you got to buy her some more jewelry.
Oh,
so the cost
that's
just
more
went up.
jewelry on top
Okay.
of the cleaning. Yeah, that's more jewelry.
All right, I'm going to open it up to some questions now, if I can, and see if you folks have got anything to say about this beautiful airplane. All right, over on that side. There we go.
Okay, can you hear me? I'm
Yep.
proud to say my uncle was one of the people on the Bunker Hill that helped solve that problem with the landings. He was one of the mechanics on the USS Bunker Hill that was attacked by kamikazes in '45. So my dad used to talk about that all the time. Two questions. On the which carriers was the Corsair on? I knew it was on the Bunker Hill. And then how many of those planes could an average size carrier in World War II hold? And three, I'm a 500-hour tailwheel pilot. How hard would it be for me to fly that thing?
Wow, that was a load of them right there. Well, as far as the beginning, they were probably on the Bunker Hill and a number of different carriers, but when they had all the issues of landing, the Navy banned them. So they stopped all operation, gave them to the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps were land-based. So I don't really know all the different carriers back then. But in the next time frame, which was Korea, this was on the Boxer. That was a big one. The Valley Forge was a big one. The Oriskany was another big one. There was more carriers, but I don't know how many more there were. I got real focused on this bird and its operational on the carriers. How hard is it to fly? Yeah, that's a good question because you need tailwheel time, and so but you have to progress. Like I would say, if you don't have any, you go out and get an L-bird, buy an L-bird, throw a bunch of couple hundred hours, get used to it, and then transit up into from like a bird dog to a T6. Then fly it for several hundred hours, get that under your belt. What you're trying to do is get heavier and heavier airplanes. And so before you get into this, because this sitting right here is probably close to 12,000 pounds, 11,500 pounds. So it's a weight issue. It's a horsepower torque issue. And so you add a lot more complexity. You've got to have a lot in your toolbox before you get here in terms of experience. T6 is the best platform to learn a lot. That thing is so squirrely. My dad always said, T6 is like a dog. You just don't know when it's going to bite you, Probably not. No, but it's a very nice aircraft. Once you understand, you have the basis, it's actually quite easy to fly. I shouldn't say this. It's easier to fly in certain aspects than a T6. T6 will make you work. Oh, my God. You're flying. Dad always told me, when that propeller's spinning, you're flying, and you're not done flying until it stops. I don't care if you're taxiing. You're still flying. Your hands and you're like this in that T6, and it's bouncing and banging, and you hit it too hard, it bounces up, and then you got to hit the throttle, work it back down. It works you. This airplane, you land. You take off. But there's torque aspects, like I was saying, no full throttle, and you really got to have your bases set to transition to an aircraft like this. But it's possible for everybody.
Concur with all that. Been there, done that.
Yep.
Yep.
There you go.
I will ask, I do this on every one of my performances, and I just want to honor the veterans out there. So those of you who are serving, have served, and spouses also, please rise so we can give you a round of applause and say thank you. So veterans,
yes.
Please rise. Thank you, and there's one right here, and I didn't know this before we just came on, but an Air National Guardsman here, South Carolina Air National Guard. Gamecocks, weren't they called Gamecocks?
Yeah,
wow. I know.
Swamp Fox.
Yeah, okay.
Gamecocks was the USC.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The Swamp
That's
Fox.
okay. It's close.
The Swamp Fox.
Swamp
that's right.
Fox. Yeah.
All right. With that,
By the
I
way,
think-
Shaw Air Force Base,
Yeah,
right up the road, right there.
I wasn't flying Corsair, so I was flying the O2. So, yeah, a little bit different.
You know, I used to have a friend that flew the Broncos up there, the OV-10s, and he'd come down to me, and we'd play games, and so he'd come out of Shaw with the OV-10s.
Yeah, I could have done it with my O2, but probably not very well. Yeah. Okay, another question over there.
2 quick questions. And I was wondering if you ever considered using the dive window. I know some earlier versions of Corsairs had dive windows, underneath the pilot's floor. And the other question is, does the wing fold work on this?
Good questions. I'll hit the dive window first. They stopped that many years ago. That was early iterations. I fly for different museums, and there is one Brewster-made Corsair flying in the world. It's in Colorado Springs, and I'm one of their pilots that fly that. And it has the window down there, and it's spooky. Every time I look down at my feet, I see plexiglass, and it's kind of strange. Of course, it gets oil and everything over it, but it doesn't really affect. But in the Brewster Corsair, the levers come out of the cockpit, out of the instrument panel like this. So you take them and you move them. It's not ergonomically comfortable at all compared to the other iterations of Corsairs. But Brewster's amazing aircraft, one of a kind, has its differences, no floor, no this, no that. And but it doesn't really make a difference because you're typically not looking down unless you're doing aerobatics, and then which I do aerobatics in it. And you can look up, which is down.
All right, one last question. That's going to be it. There's one right here.
Wing fold. I'm sorry, wing fold. Yes, they fold. I didn't. It's too windy to fold them here, but yes, the wing fold works.
Okay.
Test. There, on the starboard side of the rudder, there's a white painted platform. What is that?
What's that?
Oh, that's the antenna. Yeah, that's a nav antenna. So that's for navigation. Again, everything you put on this aircraft, antenna-wise, has to be high speed. So I'm looking at jet-type antennas, and you can't put a regular antenna on it. So that is over 500 knots. Capable, and that's what I have to put in the airplane. Otherwise, a regular nav antenna doesn't work.
Okay, with that, I'm going to say thank you. Is there any more you want to add or subtract? Anything?
Thank you for being here.
Yep. Thank you very much, Jim. I say thank you. Well done.
You. Thank you, sir.
Look forward to seeing you do your aerobatic.
Yep. It'll be on Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Outstanding. And, we appreciate your support here, too. Folks, tomorrow morning, we've got 2 Lightnings here. We've got P-38 that's parked right out there, and then that other airplane called the Lightning II, an F-35, is going to be parked right over there. So that's tomorrow morning, and the PBY will be tomorrow afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it.
Nice job.
Inspired by the veterans in my family, I started the Gary Sinise Foundation in June of 2011. It has been my honor to support and uplift our nation's defenders, our active duty service members, first responders, veterans, and the families who sacrifice alongside them. This has all been possible thanks to our incredible supporters. I am grateful to each and every one of you for your generosity. You help us to bring hope and healing to so many. To all of you, and to our nation's heroes who are serving, have served, and to your families, thank you. To learn more, visit GarySiniseFoundation.org.
40 years ago, a community came together with a shared purpose: to train better, fly smarter, and make aviation safer. From humble beginnings to a worldwide network, the North American Trainer Association has shaped generations of pilots and instructors. Flying is a discipline. It's the early mornings, the checklists repeated, the lessons learned again and again until precision becomes instinct. And safety? Safety is an attitude, a mindset carried into every decision, every flight, every generation we train. For 40 years, the North American Trainer Association has stood for excellence, not just in how we fly, but in how we think, prepare, and lead. Because in aviation, discipline builds skill, and attitude saves lives. Here's to 40 years of commitment, and to the future we'll keep shaping together.
The name Jane is actually the name of his wife. Making it exactly how it was flown by actually Rick Marshall, who was the WWII pilot.
Keeping these airplanes flying preserves stories that will no longer be told by the greatest generation. Through restorations and flying, we were able to continue their legacy and remember their sacrifices. And that's really the most important thing when you're flying these airplanes. When you go somewhere, you have the responsibility to share with people what they did, and that these aren't just airplanes, they help save our freedom.
It's hard to imagine a more podcast-worthy aviator than Robert Hoot Gibson. He's a degreed aeronautical engineer, a naval aviator with 300-plus combat missions, graduate Top Gun, graduate Naval Test Pilot School, NASA astronaut commander with 5 space shuttle missions, chief NASA astronaut, Southwest Airlines captain, world champion unlimited class air race champion. A new season of Hoot's Hangar, the exclusive podcast produced in Hoot's home studio, will shortly be in production. In this series, Hoot and an endless string of compelling guests cover all things aero combat flying, space travel, air racing, aircraft design and performance, high-profile accident investigations, RC modeling, home building, and more. Join Hoot Gibson and his guests in Hoot's Hangar, the most compelling podcast in aerospace. Now, get unlimited access to all episodes for less than a trip to the coffee bar. Just $9.95 a year. Just go to airtoairtv.com to gain access and subscribe.
Buck 1, Warhawk 40, check and jam as bragged.
Warhawk 40, Fox 1, have you loud and clear. Enemy vehicle, IVO, Blue Mountain runway.
As much as I'm looking forward to having a successful mission, cleaning all this up and getting back, it's kind of sad that this could be the last time that these guns ever fire again.
This side, hot, ready to go. That side is moments away from all 6 ripping down range.
Freeze hot. 100 feet MSL, 5, vehicle convoy, 6, target location, Blue Mountain runway, 7. Attack heading 200. Attack heading 200. Copy all. Here, arm and hot.
I guess I was fairly apprehensive the whole time that I was flying in combat. And I guess there's good reason to feel that way. I'm there to cause a lot of damage and a lot of harm, and therefore they would like to damage me. And I was 25 years old at that time. Top Gun was really a thrill. I must have done well in actual combat because at the time I was just a lieutenant junior grade, which is a first lieutenant in the Air Force. And so I may have been the very first lieutenant junior grade to go through Top Gun. STS-27 was my third launch, and it was only the second launch after the Challenger accident. Well, I will never forget, we maneuvered the arm, and Mike Mullane was my arm operator, so he moved the arm over there, and we brought up the television image of the right wing, and I looked at what I was seeing, and I said to myself, we are gonna die. Well, there's a lot of piloting that goes into it, a tremendous amount of piloting that goes into it, because you're going to wind up passing other airplanes. You're going to get in a duel with another airplane that's fairly closely matched. So there's a ton of satisfaction from doing that. And hey, let's just talk about the racing itself. It's fun to fly low, but it's dangerous.
In 1937, Japan began a war of conquest to gain control of China's vast natural resources. Japan needed them to supply its planned conquest of the entire Pacific region. By 1941, estimates are some 1 million Japanese ground troops were committed to this effort, and the Imperial Air Force had begun a merciless campaign of indiscriminate bombings of Chinese cities and civilian centers. The loss of innocent life and suffering was incalculable. China's Air Force was all but non-existent. There was no way to defend the cities. But in 1941, Claire Chennault, a retired U.S. Army Air Corps officer consulting with the Chinese Republic, convinced President Roosevelt to let him recruit and supply a volunteer force of U.S. pilots to defend China's skies. The legendary American volunteer group, Flying Tigers, were born. This year marks the 85th anniversary of the AVG Flying Tigers. Perhaps you've been concerned with the failure of our schools to teach the history of World War II, the event that literally shaped the world we now live in. Air-to-air-tv.com is a growing archive of World War II history. With this special offer, you can give the gift of history to a student or anyone who will value it for less than a trip to the coffee shop. Just go to air-to-air-tv.com to gain access and to give the gift of knowledge.
At JetGlo, we believe an aircraft is more than aluminum, paint, and rivets. It carries stories. Stories of sacrifice, stories of service, stories of the men and women who stepped forward when our country needed them the most. As a veteran myself, I understand that these aircraft are not just museum pieces. They are flying reminders of the courage, skill, and sacrifice of generations before us. That is why Warbirds in Review matters. Every time one of these machines starts, taxis, and takes to the sky, history becomes real again, not just for pilots, not just for veterans, but for families, young people, and the future generations who need to see it, hear it, and feel it. At JetGlo, we are proud to support the Warbird community, aircraft owners, operators, and the people who work so hard to keep these aircraft flying. We specialize in aviation-only detailing, aircraft appearance and preservation care, bright work polishing, window restoration, ceramic coatings, and condition maintenance, because preserving an aircraft's appearance is part of preserving its legacy. JetGlo is based right here in Oshkosh, and we are proud to support Warbirds in Review. To every veteran, restorer, crew chief, pilot, and volunteer who keeps history alive, thank you. JetGlo is proud to stand with you, because every flight deserves a JetGlo.